Good afternoon and thank you. It's a real pleasure to be here today, our first formal engagement with the council post-election. So congratulations to all of you, for the new ones and for the ones who have been re-elected. And we hugely value our engagement with the council, and we're looking forward to doing more of it as we workshop and discuss the transition program going forward. But I'll hand it over to Ivan.
Thanks, Rose. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mayor and elected members. In the interest of time, I'd like to suggest taking the annual report for the year to the 30th of June 2019 as read, and I'm happy to take questions. I'd also like to suggest taking the subsequent quarterly status report for the 3 months to the end of September 2019 as read, but I would like to correct an error in my cover memo at the end of paragraph 5, which incorrectly refers to the first meeting for this financial year between the board and the Associate Minister and the Mayor. That sentence should have stated that the board looks forward to the first meeting between the board, Associate Minister and Mayor following the local body elections in October, and that meeting is currently scheduled for the 6th of December 2019. So I apologise for that error. In terms of the quarterly period from July to September, I would like to take the opportunity just to briefly highlight a couple of matters. The first being that during that quarterly period, Megan Woods, the Minister for Greater Christchurch Regeneration, approved the Otakaro Avon River Corridor Regeneration Plan that was developed by Regenerate Christchurch, which involves significant community engagement and extensive technical analysis. And I congratulate the Council on its recent decision to approve an investment case which seeks approval to have $40 million allocated from the Christchurch Regeneration Capital Acceleration Facility to help commence implementation of the regeneration plan. Also during the quarterly period, Regenerate Christchurch finalised and submitted the Section 71 proposal for the Hagley Oval to the Associate Minister, and I note that through a related but separate process, the Council is publicly consulting on a lease for the Canterbury Cricket Trust. Since submitting the quarterly report, Regenerate Christchurch has provided its advice regarding the residential red zone areas in Port Hills, South Shore and South New Brighton, and Brooklands to the Minister and Christchurch City Council, which I understand will be provided to you by your officials in the near future for your consideration. And finally, in addition to contributing to and supporting the work of our partners, as you will note from the status report, transition and the development of a transition plan is the key organisational priority for Regenerate Christchurch. Thank you, and we're happy to take questions. Or not.
Or not. Are there any questions? Jan.
I'm going to take the both together or separately.
Just on, thank you. So just on page 548, you talk about using the enhanced framework to do an assessment of potential regeneration activities, subject to stakeholder feedback. And earlier on in the report, one of your targets is, you say you've developed a taxonomy for prioritisation, and I was just wondering if you could just kind of help me understand what that is, and what's the process, if there's any, for you to consider other things other than what has been specifically described to you to do in terms of like specific projects?
Sure. Happy to respond to that. So in the annual report that Councillor Yanni is referring to, Regenerate Christchurch developed a taxonomy that enables us to quickly filter and assess potential regeneration opportunities in terms of the appropriate mechanism for them to be considered under and the extent of effort and resourcing that Regenerate Christchurch might provide to them. Subsequent to developing that, we received the updated letter of expectations from the Council and the Crown, which asked us to prioritise our efforts in relation to preparing for transition, and specifically asked us not to initiate any new plans, strategies, visions, benchmarking, commercial or other activities. And so whilst we have developed the taxonomy, we haven't proactively sought to use it, but it did help us to consider, for example, when we were approached by the Canterbury Cricket Trust, the extent to which we might look to invest resource and support to develop the Section 71 proposal. Right. In terms of your second question regarding the process for how and when Regenerate Christchurch might proactively undertake any further assessments. The letter of expectations was quite clear that we are to respond to requests rather than initiate new work.
Right. So the taxonomy is basically, taxonomy is not, it's not a list of projects that you've looked at. It's basically a framework by which if someone comes to you with a project, you do the assessment.
Correct.
Great, thanks. Yeah. Thanks for
Thank you.
clarifying that.
James?
Notwithstanding what you've just mentioned, and also your report, thank you, can you give a verbal update on progress, because you've got that investigation and analysis on options for South Shore? Can you give us any illumination on that?
I'm happy to, but I do note that we've provided the advice to council and you've yet to receive the advice from council officials, which is the appropriate mechanism for you to receive the report from Regenerate Christchurch.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's in train. Yeah.
It is, yes.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Any further questions? And the transition planning,
Yes.
obviously some early work is underway. And I noticed there are, across the various documents, there are various aspects of transition are referred to. Are you able to just provide a little bit more information on the transition planning which is underway, and maybe some thoughts as to where that might go, and timelines that you're working to? Just what you're able to do in this session.
Yeah. So work to date has primarily focused on ensuring alignment and a cohesive approach at an officials level between Regenerate Christchurch staff, the Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet and Council. We are keen to understand the work that DPMC is considering following the recent annual review of the Greater Christchurch Regeneration Act and any implications on an early repeal of the GCRA. We've established a framework for developing the regeneration plan and are meeting with chief executives as well as staff throughout the various organisations. And we are also working to organise a workshop or information session with councillors at the earliest opportunity.
Yeah. And tomorrow, the board of Regenerate Christchurch is meeting with the mayor and the associate minister. So we probably could answer that question a bit better tomorrow, Deputy Mayor. But we're working very, very closely with, as we said, officials and our various partners. Also, can I just throw into the mix that Regenerate Christchurch is supporting the discussions around Greater Christchurch 2050 as also a vehicle through which we will transition regeneration going forward.
Great, thank you for that. Yanni?
Thank you. I mean, in light of that, probably the thing that I'm really trying to understand in terms of Regenerate's role is post, the establishment, the areas that are not regenerating across the city, whether you've had any sort of high-level insights into areas that are really struggling and what is required to do that outside of the central city and outside of South Shore, South New Brighton, which is specifically mentioned.
So look, we've only undertaken some very initial preliminary work, and that work was not progressed in response to the letter of expectations, which asked us to prioritise our focus on regeneration. One of the work streams within regeneration, and one of the things that we've been asked to do by the council and the minister, is to consider how best to transfer the knowledge, the IP, and the work that we've done to date to inheriting agencies for them to take the work forward.
So what's your role in 2050 in terms of like the city? I'm not quite clear.
So the 2050 work is being led through the Greater Christchurch Partnership, and Regenerate Christchurch is contributing resources and support to the project.
Right. Sorry, it still doesn't. So you're just providing advice on what?
No, we're contributing funding and in-kind resources to enable the project to deliver the expected or the required outcomes to the Greater Christchurch Partnership.
Okay. And that's in the letter of expectation, or is that in the work program, or whatever?
Yeah, so our work program consists of 3 areas. One is providing regeneration advice, the second area is collaboration and engagement, and the third is transition.
So I guess if I should be a bit more blunt, how do
Sure.
we get regeneration advice in the lower socioeconomic areas that are struggling?
Yeah.
That's what I can't seem to kind of understand. Who has responsibility for looking at the areas that have been left behind post-earthquake that are suffering and struggling, and who kind of picks that up and says, hey, something's going really badly here? So we need to direct
We are
you.
responsible, yeah.
Could it, yeah.
Yeah. So the letter of
Not
expectations
regenerate
has requested that, and the global settlement agreement,
Apologise.
that Regenerate Christchurch transitions its strategic regeneration functions and leadership to locally based organisations.
Right.
All right, so that's a conversation we can pick up internally. Sam?
Yeah, mine's fine. Yanni has got that at the beginning of mine. That's all good.
All right, fantastic. Thank you. Any further questions? Okay, so we've got a resolution in front of us to note the annual report and the joint report. I'm happy to move both of those. Sarah Templeton's happy to second. All those in favour say aye. Against? That's carried. Thank you. And thank you both for your input at the table this afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you.